Hi everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. Thanks to everyone for joining me tonight and my guest Patrick Meechan. And if you would please give the show a like, and for those who are joining the show for the first time, if you would please subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate it. Well, tonight we have two stories of demonic hauntings, and I'm really excited to bring this to you tonight. My guest is Patrick. Is it Meechan or Meechan?
Just Meechan.
Okay, Meechan. And Patrick, everybody, let's welcome Patrick to the show. And Patrick, thank you so much for joining me. I had listened to some of your interviews on YouTube, and I'm fascinated about two haunted houses that you lived in. So tonight, actually, before we start talking about your hauntings, would you please tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank you for having me on your program. It's an honor and a privilege to be on your program. So I would like to say that first of all. A little bit about me. I look at myself as just a average, ordinary American male. I had some extraordinary experiences, however. I just lived the normal life like anyone else, but then I began finding myself in situations that I could not explain, situations that the only thing that made sense to me eventually was, I was brought up in Sunday school and brought up in church, and, I had heard stories of demonic possession, stories of things like this as a kid, but I kind of, never, I thought they were interesting, certainly, but I never thought it would happen to me. But eventually I came to the conclusion that this is the only thing that makes sense in this situation. This must be what I'm dealing with. And through my experiences, I've learned how to fight back. I've learned how to engage the enemy, so to speak. And that is why I believe that I was allowed to experience those two separate haunted houses that were completely unrelated, because through going through that, I learned things that, when you're the person who's I don't like to use the word lightly, but the victim. If you're the victim in a haunting, and most times people that have gone through this would probably agree with me. If you go to the church and you ask them for help, they act like you're crazy. They act like it's your fault. And I don't believe that is how it's supposed to be. I believe that you should be able to find help and deal with these things so your life isn't tormented or worse, possibly destroyed. So my perspective, I've been called a deliverance minister. Technically, I have ministered deliverance. Technically, I have done exorcisms. Technically, I'm an author, but I'm also just an average guy who, goes out and works hard every day at a regular job, and also shares my experiences and tries to help others when I can.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. I'm going to show them the two books. So let's talk a little bit about them. You have 2200 Fifth Street and The Nightmare in Holmes County. So what I'd like to do, well, you want to talk a little bit about the book and ask and tell them where they can get the books?
Yes, both books are available. You can go right to patrickmeechan.com. Last name is spelled Meechan. There's links right there to pick up paperbacks or Kindle versions, or you can go to Amazon and you can pick them up at Amazon as well, either paperback or Kindle for Nightmare in Holmes County, or a paperback you have to get at this point at for 225th Street at patrickmeechan.com.
And both of these books are about what? They're both related to what?
Each book is a separate, completely true story of two completely unrelated haunted houses that I lived in back to back. I lived in them consecutively, and that was the reason I felt, who goes through this? When I went through the Nightmare in Holmes County, when I came out of that situation, I knew that I had to write a book about it. I knew it because I felt like I had been delivered of a nightmare that I felt like I couldn't wake up from. So I moved to this other house, which happened to be 225th Street, and I started writing Nightmare in Holmes County, and I kept trying to discredit things that were happening at 225th Street, but I was like, okay, don't freak yourself out. But this house cannot be haunted. You couldn't have two haunted houses in a row, you know. And I tried to discredit that, but then I come to realize, okay, the unthinkable has happened. You are living in a second haunted house that is completely unrelated from the first haunting. So,
Well,
again, I don't think you go through something like that by chance.
well, not only that, the two houses were just not haunted. I mean, a lot of us have ghosts in our house, but the hauntings that you experienced were to the extreme. So, you know what I would like to start tonight? I would like to start out with the nightmare in Holmes County.
Okay.
Can you tell the viewers where this house is located, and then tell your story, but tell them where it was located.
Okay, it is actually in Holmes County, Ohio, which is, you know, I believe at this point, you know, when I lived there, I always believed that was the second largest population of Amish in the world, second only to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. However, since that time, I have been told that Holmes County has surpassed Lancaster, PA, and Holmes County is the largest population of Amish in the entire world. So that is where this house is located. It's in eastern Holmes County, and basically, you know, you would the last place in the world that going into this situation that you would expect that your life would turn upside down and you would experience the kinds of things I did. Me and my it's now my ex-wife, we're looking to buy a piece of land and build a home, and you know, it was our dream. We had saved for several years, and we were led to a piece of land in Holmes County, Ohio, and it was a beautiful piece of land. It had been nothing but farm country as far as we knew, and we were buying it from an Amish couple that had actually bought it when that farm had gone up for auction. And we bought the house, we bought the land, and we hired a builder to build the house, and basically, you know, expected that this is going to be very happy. You know, we're going to have our dream home. We actually designed the layout of the house ourselves. So it had a very open concept. There were all kinds of neat little things that we had done when it was built that were to our liking, you know, that were not the way everybody has their house done. Made it very, very comfortable. And, you know, that was in 2001. That was in the fall of 2001 after 9/11. And in early 2002, the builder broke ground and began building the house. It was still in the winter, and everything was going great. The house, they got the foundation poured, the basement walls built, and they framed up the whole house. It was completely framed up. They had put the OSB board, the wood siding, in other words, nailed to the studs for the outer walls of the house. And in March, we got a phone call one Saturday night from the builder. And he called me and he said, I did not want to break this news to your wife, so I'm telling you. He said that the house was destroyed. He said it was completely blown over. There was a bad storm, and he said it's demolished. And he kept saying to me, he was in his 60s, and he kept saying, I have never seen anything like this in all my years of building. Now, you think a guy in his 60s who had been Amish, so he had left the Amish faith, but he had been Amish his whole life. He has been building houses or working that kind of work virtually, you know, almost his whole life, you know, probably from 12 years old on. And he kept saying, I have never seen anything like this. So we just considered that a run of bad luck, you know, nothing more. And they came, and the insurance company paid to have everything redone. They hauled away the old wood, and they started over. And as the house began to take shape, you know, we, to save costs, did a lot of the woodworking ourselves, as far as staining the woodwork, finishing the woodwork. You know, so the house was not only laid out to our, basically our idea of, you know, what was perfect for us. You know, it was not only that, it had our fingerprints everywhere. You know, like this wood was finished by me. You know, yes, the builder put the house together, but I actually did this woodwork. You know, so it was, you know, what seemed like it would just be, you know, happily ever after existence. You know, but I started going to the house while it was being finished and working on woodwork late at night. And early on, I just thought, this must just be because I'm not familiar with this area. But I would go into the house, I'd work till 10 o'clock at night and then stop by that house and go in and work on sanding wood or staining wood or whatever, And I kept having this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. And, it was unnerving. It was very, very powerful. And it was to the point that I would take I would take a boombox, a radio, plays CDs. I would take that with me, and I would play worship music, like Christian music, because that was the only thing that kind of made me, like, those feelings of being watched would kind of dissipate. I never thought much of it, though. I just kept thinking, that's a house I'm not familiar with. I don't know this area. There's no houses even close to me, so I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I just attributed those feelings to that. One day, I stopped by the building site on my way to work to check on the building crew, and I'd stop and bring them something to drink every once in a while, and just see how they were doing, just because it was hot out. By that time, we're into the summer of 2002. And one day, the building crew was kind of strange. The builder, his personality had drastically changed throughout the building process. He did not even seem like the same individual. And his son was always as nice as can be. He's a good guy. But the crew was kind of odd. And there was one gentleman in the crew that was a little bit, he just was unnerving. He kind of made you on edge a little bit, made you uncomfortable. And I stopped one day, and I'm talking to the builder, and I happened to stop during their lunch. And this gentleman is sitting, in the book I called him Abe. Okay, I changed people's names just out of respect to them. I didn't legally have to. I did it out of respect. But Abe is sitting in the garage. I think he was sitting like on a bucket or on his lunch bucket, leaning against the wall, and he's not talking. And he has a really freaked out look on his face. And I'm talking to the builder about what they're doing next or whatever. And all of a sudden, Abe interjects into the conversation. He says, "There was a man here last night." Now, Abe lived with his parents on a hill that was higher than all the other houses in the area, and overlooked the valley where the house was. So he could see everything, even though he was not close. And I thought for a second, and I remembered that my wife had a girlfriend, and that girl's new boyfriend had stopped by to see the house. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's no big deal. That was just, Chelsea brought a couple friends over to show him the house. That's all it was." And he says, "No, that's not what I'm talking about." So he proceeds to tell me this story that he was taking his car to a garage out on Route 62, which you had to go down my road to get there if you wanted to take the shortcut. And he claimed that when he went by, he said there was a man hiding in the grass at the edge of the property by the field watching the house. And he said this guy was very scary looking. He said, after I dropped my car off at the garage, I walked the long way home, which that's a couple miles probably out of his way, walking. He said, I did not want to get down that road alone and run into that guy. And at the time, I did not know what to make of it. I thought, boy, that's weird. Is he telling the truth? Man, he sure does seem like he's shook up.
Did he have a description?
Very strange.
Did he tell you the description of the man?
He just said he looked very scary.
Oh.
That's what he said. That's all that he really said. He looked very scary. And at that point, I thought, well, maybe somebody's planning on breaking in. And I said, well, I have guns and I'm having a security system installed. And I said, somebody threatens me or my wife, I'm going to protect my family, But it was just a very strange situation, especially as we got further into the experience of living there. So eventually, end of the summer, beginning of the fall, we moved into the house. We did have some issues with things. The builder, like I said, his personality had completely changed, and there were things that he built so well that it was unbelievable. Like his craftsmanship and workmanship was wonderful. And then there were other things that were so shoddy, it was like, how in the world could you possibly think that was okay, So we started running into issues. And my wife started saying, I'm hearing noises when you're not here, and they're freaking me out. I don't know if the house is going to fall in. I don't know what these noises are, but, something's wrong. So we called in some house inspectors, like building inspectors. Mm-hmm. And they went through everything, and they did identify several things that needed to be fixed that were, screw-ups, compliments of the builder. And we ended up, started a legal proceeding with the builder eventually got to the place where it was like, okay, in Holmes County, that this guy used to be Amish. He subcontracts his jobs to the Amish. You don't butt heads with them. It's a waste of time. The court, nobody's going to back us as far as the court's concerned. So we dropped everything, and I paid someone else to come and fix everything. So at that point, it seemed like, okay, all that bad stuff's behind us. That was unfortunate. It, put a lot of stress on both of us, but it's okay now. So, most of the strange noises, and I mean, they were very strange noises. Most of them dissipated after the work was completed on, fixing everything. But I then began, it was like everything kind of took another turn. And one of the first things I noticed was one night we had, when you came out of the garage, what we called it the mud room, but it was a laundry room. It had a utility tub and a closet and a washer and dryer. And that's where I always kept my cats' food and their water, and their litter box was in a little closet and all that, So that's where I always fed the animals and everything. We had 2 cats in the house at that point, okay? So one night I'm standing in that room, and, Chelsea had already gone to bed, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden the dryer door opens by itself. And I thought, okay, that is crazy. I have never in my life seen a dryer door open by itself. How can that be, So I just kind of filed it away in my mind and thought it was strange. Okay, a short while later, I was in the room again. And it was late at night. I reached in the closet, got a bag of food out, put food in the cat's dish, and I saw Zoe. Zoe was a little kitten. Moses was a big tabby cat, okay? Zoe's a calico. They do not look alike, okay? Zoe comes in. I put the food in the dish, and Zoe comes running into the room and runs to the dish. I looked right at her, and I thought, how cute. I mean, she's an adorable cat. I just looked at her, and I thought, how cute. I put the bag of food away, left her in there eating, and walked out of the room. I walked through the house, through the foyer. I turned to go up the stairs, and Zoe was sitting on the top step staring at me. And I thought, that's impossible. And then I thought, okay, my eyes were playing tricks on me. That must have been Moses that I saw in the mud room eating. I thought it was Zoe, but it had to have been Moses because she couldn't be here right now. So I go up the stairs, I walk across the landing and open the bedroom door, and Moses is sleeping on the bed with my wife.
Oh my God.
The next day I told her, and I was very hesitant, but I felt like I had to tell her. I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but listen to what happened last night. So I told her, and I remember plain as day, she was like, oh, don't even tell me that. Don't even tell me that. And I kept thinking she was going to say, don't tell me I'm married to a crazy person, And she said, don't even tell me that. And then she hesitates and she says, there are times when I'm here alone and I'm downstairs on the elliptical. We had like a workout area in our basement. We did not let the cats in the basement. She said, I will be on the elliptical trainer and I will see Moses run through the room out of the corner of my eye. And she said, I will think there's Moses. And then she said, I remember that he's upstairs, the basement door's shut. He's not even allowed down here. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm glad that I'm not the only one having these experiences. But, it's interesting. She's had these experiences and never said anything till I did, So basically, at that point, I was like, something is not adding up here. This is very strange. And as often is the case with situations where there's hauntings, and I've seen this many, many times, since my time living there and done research on haunted houses, talking to many other people or helping people who went through these situations. Usually in that environment, what is there will exploit weaknesses or certain traits in either individual, and they can turn a family against each other. They can make people hate each other.
Oh, yeah.
And that is, I believe, that played a part in my situation. And eventually, I felt my wife's behavior became very, very different, very violent. She became like a completely different person, attacked me multiple times. It was very, very...
Patrick,
yes.
Also attachments can do the same thing. Did she possibly have an attachment from the house?
I'll tell you what, I'll let you and the listeners decide that.
Okay.
If you read through the book, I think people will draw their own conclusions
Okay.
about a lot of things. But there's certain things I mentioned in there I think people can add up if they choose to. I think, let me put it this way. I don't think it's necessarily that everybody in those environments could get possessed. They could, I suppose people can, but I will say this, if you have any issues that you have not dealt with, anyone in that house, you have issues you haven't come to grips with or worked through, they will exploit those, and they will use those against you. They will use it in ways that are so deceitful that you won't even realize what's being done. You're being played and you don't know it. So I do believe that it's possible in attachment. I believe that it was like there was something there probably. I believe it was like there was something there pulling her strings. I do think that. But again, I think when you read the book, people will draw their own conclusions of what all was possibly going on. I will tell you this: there was, as we were began having marital problems, we started going to counseling, and one night after counseling, now keep in mind, it got to the point where we both, now when I was dating her, one time we watched Scream with another couple, and she was furious. She hated scary movies, and she didn't like them. Okay, it got to the point in that house where we were both watching Ghost Hunters, we were both watching A Haunting, because anything, we were like, it was almost like you felt like you had to validate yourself because there's something here, and if these guys are scientifically with equipment proving that hauntings are real, that means I'm not crazy, So I think that was kind of in both of our heads. It was certainly in mine, and she began watching all those shows. In fact, I would come home from work and she would have watched them by herself in this house in the middle of nowhere, totally out of character. But one night we went to counseling, we came home, and we were watching A Haunting, and we were in what we called the great room. It was our living room. And I said, here's a very strange experience, okay? I felt her leave the room. The way the room was laid out and where I was sitting versus where she was sitting, she was out of my range of view unless I turned around and looked behind me, because she was like kind of to my right and sitting farther back in the room. I felt her presence leave the room. I didn't hear her get up, so I was thinking she couldn't have got up and left because I would have heard her, but I know that she's not in the room. This is crazy. So I said, I commented on the TV show. It was A Haunting. I remember that clearly. And I commented on it, and she didn't answer me. So I repeated myself. She didn't answer me. And I said something again, and she didn't answer. I turned around and looked at her, and she was sitting on, we had a love seat, and we had an ottoman in front of it. She had her feet up. She was sitting on the love seat, and her head was tilted back. Her eyes and her mouth were wide open. It was one of the creepiest looking things you can imagine. And I called her by name, and I said, Chelsea, and she snapped out of it. It was literally like she snapped out of a trance. She jerked her head and looked at me funny, and I said, are you okay? And she goes, yeah, why? Like very condescending. And I said, I asked you a question 3 times and you didn't answer me. And she got this very bewildered look and said, I did not even hear you. Now, that was not just someone zoning out. I can't tell you 100% what that was, but it was very, very strange. Then later, there were other instances that happened. There were, the violent attacks, completely different. It was like a completely different person. Then I came home in early October that year, and she was gone. And at that time, we're fast forwarded. So there's a lot of incidences in between this, but by that time, we're up to 2006. So we moved in 2002. This is at 2006. And
oh my God! So, and all of these circumstances and strange things were was this on a daily basis?
There were times when it seemed like everything was fine, and then there would be times like you swore you saw a black shadow out of the corner of your eye. You would, you would hear something, or you would just swear that, the lights flickered or something, and you would just, all stuff that just kind of messed with your head. There were times when I realized, okay, we're probably getting a divorce, and I really don't want a divorce, and I would literally stay up all night praying, and I would feel like somebody was watching me so strongly that I would have to open my eyes and look around the room. I really felt like somebody was there. So
now, Patrick, during this time when you were feeling so easy, you said that you prayed, but did you try and get any help from clergy, or did you try to do anything yourself at this particular time to get
Yes.
rid of what was in the house?
Yeah, and this is one of the things I share as I go throughout the book and I think this is usually the case with hauntings, is sometimes you have to be very specific at dealing with why it's there. I believe that's the case with exorcisms on people or property. If something is there and it's not just like a freak thing, it's like something is actually entrenched in that environment. Somebody opened a door somewhere to that. And you have to deal with what gave it a legal right to be there. So clear back in 2006, I had walked the property. I just took like olive oil because I knew I needed anointing oil, and I would walk the whole property alone. I would pray. I plead the blood of Jesus, so to speak. I'd pray the blood of Jesus over the property. I would walk through the house. I would anoint things in the house, and I did all those things. And I would say, you have to leave. I'm telling you, you have to leave. I own this house. I'm a Christian. You have to listen to me. They wouldn't leave. And the reason why is it took me many more years to find out what was the reason there was something there in the first place, and I had to specifically deal with that. Now, there's people that'll tell you that is not the case, and my thing on that is simply this: when a Christian or a so-called clergyman tells me that you don't have to be specific, my next question to them is, how many exorcisms have you ever done? And the answer, of course, is 0. Because the bottom line is everybody has theories that don't stand up to real life. The demons are very smart. They're very manipulative. They're very powerful. And they will use anything they can to outsmart you. They've been around longer than me. These things were fallen. My view on these is they're fallen angels. So they were around with Lucifer in heaven. They were angels at one time. They're much smarter than me, okay? Or anyone else for that matter. So, I had walked the property, done all those things, and nothing seemed to help. And the interesting part, when I came home and my wife was gone, it took a couple of days before I was finally able to even find out where she was and contact her. And she told me that the night before she left, and here was the interesting part, she would not have known the significance of what she said. She said, Saturday, late in the afternoon, I believe, when she left, but she said on Saturday morning at 3 a.m., she heard someone ring the doorbell and let themselves in the house. And I said, that didn't happen. I was downstairs. I would have heard it. No, I didn't let anybody in. I didn't hear anything. And she said, well, I heard it. It woke me up. Now, and I know 3 a.m. is significant, especially in demonic hauntings. So I do believe that there was, what was going on there had a role in the way the situation turned out.
Oh, now, are you going to continue on about what you found out about the land?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
go.
As it turned out, during from the time that she left until the divorce, it seemed like a lot of the activity dissipated. And I kept thinking, okay, she must have opened a door. I think she was cheating on me. She opened a door. She probably had somebody in here cheating on me. That's evil. You shouldn't do that. But maybe that's it. That must be the case. She opened these doors, and that's it left with her. That was my thinking, and I was hoping, of course. Well, the divorce was the beginning of February. By February 11th, all doubt was removed that, number one, it did not leave with her. Number two, the house was 100%, no question about it, it was haunted. I had an experience on February 11th where we had a lot of snowfall that weekend. It was the weekend before Valentine's Day, of course. And we had a lot of snow. And it had started snowing Friday. And, I had not left any tracks in the snow around the house or anything. Sunday morning, I wake up and the house is freezing. And I'm thinking my furnace broke, or somehow I may have run out of propane in a propane tank, but I was thinking that's impossible. I had 400 gallons in it. It's a 1,000-gallon tank just a week and a half ago. I couldn't have used that much. So regardless, I called my propane supplier, and he starts explaining to me that before he does an emergency call on Sunday, which he's going to have to charge me extra for, that he tells me to go check this vent on the regulator on the side of my house, which is where the pipe comes in from my propane tank and then goes into the regulator and then into the house to the furnace. as he's explaining this, I take the cordless phone, because of course I don't know what he's talking about, and I walk out through the patio around the back of the house. The snow is deep and it's completely undisturbed. I walk over to the regulator mounted to the back of the house. I lean over, I gently push the snow away from the regulator, and there's a pipe that comes out of the bottom of the regulator and goes underground, okay? There's a shutoff valve on that pipe. And as soon as I push the snow gently away, I see that the shutoff valve was turned sideways. So I told him, I said, wait a second, could this thing have been installed wrong? And he's like, no, that's your problem. You shut off your propane. I said, I didn't touch it. I have not touched this. And he said, okay, I believe you, but somebody did. And I said, you don't understand. I had heat last night. Now I don't. The snow is undisturbed. He said, well, open that valve up. You'll hear the propane go through the line. He goes, go back in and relight your pilot lights. You'll have heat. You'll be fine. I did as he instructed. He was correct. The problem at that point was, how in the world did a shutoff valve under probably a foot of snow get turned off without the snow being disturbed? It's impossible. At that point, I was like, okay, yes, you've seen creepy shadows or heard things or saw your wife's behavior change. You've had some weird experiences. You saw your cat, but it couldn't have been your cat, whatever. This removes all doubt. This is impossible otherwise. So at that point, I had to come to grips with, okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what caused this, okay? So as time rolls on, it's an absolutely, it's a horrible existence. I'm in the divorce. I assumed all marital debt because I knew that house had a lot of equity in it. The property values had gone through the roof since we bought the property. The house we had, it was built for a good price, so it was worth way more than what I owed by far. And that was the only thing I was going to walk away from the divorce with. So I'm putting the house up for sale in early 2007, hoping like crazy it sells quick. And that didn't happen. It stayed on the market nearly just under 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
And every day that it's not selling, I'm getting closer to, boy, I could end up bankrupt over this, So that, just the stress of that alone was overwhelming. But in that environment, at that point, I knew, okay, this place is haunted. I don't even have a clue how to deal with this. I already prayed. I don't know what to do. And the experiences are continuing, So it got to the point where I was having things like, the good thing that came from it was I kept researching exorcism and researching it and studying my Bible and trying to, get information from people that I trusted that knew about deliverance. And so I started learning, and through that, I started being able to help other people that were full-on demon-possessed. Now, the interesting part is, imagine you leave the property, you go to visit someone their house or whatever, and you do an exorcism. It's dramatic. There's no question it's real. It's not fake. You witness unbelievable things. The exorcism is successful. Then you go back home to a house that you can't rid yourself of. It was like, this is like the worst nightmare imaginable. I can't wake up from this. And there were times I would go home from doing an exorcism and I knew I was in a house that I was surrounded by demonic spirits. What could I do? So I'd pray against it, but I would sleep with the Bible open on my chest because that was the only thing that gave me a little bit of comfort that maybe they'll leave me alone. But it got to the point where, I had heard growls in the house, scratching in the walls. I actually felt a presence one night that, it's interesting. When I've heard people like the Warrens share some of their accounts, it's like, oh my goodness, I've experienced that exact same thing. But one night in particular, I felt something make its presence known when I was in the office. And I was actually sending an email to an exorcist asking for prayer. And whatever was in that house did not want me doing that. So it manifested its presence. And I felt it. People who have been in that environment, you know what I mean. Your hair stands on end. You are scared to death. And I got up and I tried to get out of the room. And it literally felt like something was holding me back. And it felt like, when you're walking in a real heavy current of water and you're going against the water, that's what it felt like.
Oh my God.
There was nothing I could see.
So then you said it started manifesting, but you weren't able to, you did not see it?
Not at that point.
Okay.
I felt, I'll be honest, when I felt its presence come into the room, I really believed that I was going to see something when I turned around. The computer sat facing the corner. It was like a corner desk. And I felt when I turned around, it was so powerful, the feeling of its presence, that I believed I was going to see something. I fought my way out of the room. I ran out, and, it's funny, and I mention this in the book simply because it's relevant. I've lifted weights for years, okay? I am not, I'm not afraid of people. I can handle myself. I can lift a lot of weight, whatever. That doesn't matter in a situation with a haunting, because you cannot fight a spiritual battle with physical strength. So I get out of that room, and I'm like, I'm going to call my mom. My mom's a prayer warrior. She prays all the time. I'm going to call her. I run out, and at this time I had dial-up internet, So I go running out into the kitchen. I grab the phone, put it up to my ear, and, you hear the doodle-doodle, the little internet sound. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I have to go back in that room and disconnect the internet before I can even use the phone. So that was, to say the least, not a pleasant experience. But it got to where I would have, the TV turning on by itself. One night I had a nightmare of doing an exorcism on some guy. And it wasn't anyone I had really ever seen or remembered in actually meeting in real life. But in the dream, the guy was very strange looking, and he had long gray hair. And I started to do the exorcism, and the guy's name was Kenny. And I said, I'm not talking to you anymore, Kenny. I'm talking to what's in you. And when I said that, his eyes changed. And I woke, the dream ended. I didn't wake up yet, but the dream just stopped. Right there when his eyes started to become demonic, the dream ended. I woke up later because my phone was ringing. So I roll over and I pick up it's a cordless phone. It's hung up, buttons down. And I answer the phone, and I hear, "This is the Holmes County Sheriff's Department. Are you okay?" So I'm thinking it must be a natural disaster. They're checking on people or something. And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why are you calling me and asking me if I'm okay?" And they said, "Because you called 911." And I said, "No, I didn't." And they said, "Yes, you did." And I said, "No, I didn't." They said, "Somebody in your house did."
Oh my God.
And I said, "It's me and 3 cats." At that point, I had another cat. I said, nobody called you." And they still sent a deputy, because they, that could be a domestic dispute, or something. So they still sent a deputy out. And I told the deputy, because there were multiple times where I had to call the deputies because things I was dealing with out of the Amish and all sorts of strange things out there. But I told the deputy, I said, I've told you guys that there's issues out here. There's weird stuff going on out here. I've told you that. And I said, this is a perfect example. I said, I did not call you. I don't know how that happened. All my doors were locked. The security system was armed. There was only one phone that could have been used, and it was beside me, hung up, buttons down. It's not even like some strange thing happened and my cat knocked the phone off the hook and stepped on 911. There was no explanation. But I began having things like that, that would just try your sanity. Just things to mess with you and remind you that we're still here and there's nothing you can do about it, One night I was sitting in the living room, and I was in the great room again, and it had a vaulted ceiling, and right across from me where I was sitting on the couch was our fireplace. To my left was Moses and Zoe, my cats, and I'm sitting there, and if I looked to my right, I could see the whole way to the other side of the house, because we had built a house with a very open concept. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just, if I remember correctly, I was sitting there eating, and I wasn't really having any creepy feelings. I wasn't, everything seemed calm at that moment. And out of the I'm looking straight ahead, and out of the corner of my right eye, I saw a black mass. It was black. It was like decent in size. It wasn't like massive, but it was like a black shadow, but it was dark. It was very dark. And it shot through the house. It looked like it came in through the sunroom at the back of the house. It went straight through the open area and disappeared into the foyer. Now, the interesting part, I was looking straight ahead. If you are looking straight ahead, you can see peripherally out of both sides. So out of my peripheral vision on my right, I saw the black mass go right through the room. Out of my peripheral vision on my left side, I saw Moses and Zoe both. Their heads went up and from the right to the left, following the trajectory of the black mass. So I knew this is not your imagination. They saw it too. I had times where I was standing at the kitchen sink late at night, and I drink apple cider vinegar with water a lot just because it's healthy for you. So I'll drink that at night a lot before I go to bed. And I'm standing in my kitchen, it's pitch black outside, and I am, in front of the kitchen sink, and the only light is overhead and it's behind me, okay? So it's not even like I could have somehow cast a shadow that I would have seen, okay? When I went to I tipped my head back to drink the apple cider vinegar mixed with water, and when I did that, my eyes naturally fell right on the window in front of me. Well, it's light in the house, pitch black outside, looks like a mirror. Plain as day, I saw over my left shoulder a black figure over behind me, just behind my left shoulder. When I saw it, it disappeared in a downward motion. So it knew that I saw it, it disappeared in a downward motion. These are just some of the many experiences I had in that house. And the closer it got to me getting answers and finding out what was causing the haunting, the more the activity escalated. And I will tell you this, and this is one thing that shocks a lot of people, but I'm sorry, I lived there. I know. And to me, I don't think it should be such a stretch to believe something like what I'm going to share next. I was outside working one day, beautiful sunny day. The property was beautiful. The surrounding land was beautiful, okay? Out of the blue, I believe that, as a Christian, I believe God shows you things sometimes. He chooses when he does it. I can't just know anything I want to know, but, I'm able to discern things a lot. I felt like I heard a voice say to me, like not an audible voice, but like in my mind, it said, they're practicing witchcraft. And I stopped and I looked all around and I'm like, okay, if this was cloudy and creepy looking outside today, I could see my imagination conjuring that thought up or something. Where did this come from? And then the next thought, same thing as that, that thought that said they are practicing witchcraft, it said old world witchcraft. So I was like, okay, I really believe I'm being shown this. And I believe they is the Amish people around me. And I shared that with my mother. And in her line of work, she came in contact with a gentleman who had left the Amish religion. And she was talking to him, and she told him, and he said, have your son call me. So I called this gentleman, and I explained, I said, I believe they're practicing witchcraft. And he said, first thing he said was, who told you that? And I said, no one told me, but I think God showed me that. And he said, well, I can tell you for a fact it's true. He said, I left over a lot of those things. He said, I became a Christian, and I saw that, yeah, they'll use a Bible, but they mix in all this other stuff too. And he said, my own family still does it. And he said, it is witchcraft. And he said, I told my dad that he needed to stop. And he said, my dad said, but it works. And this gentleman said to his father, he said, of course it works. The devil has power too, But he said, the Amish call me the deceiver. He said, because I tried to get other Amish people to become Christian now, and he said, they don't like me. And the reason I think that's a shock is the average person thinks of the Amish as the most devout Christians on the face of the earth. Yeah. And I'm sure some of them are very devout. I'm not saying that some of them aren't, but I'm saying there is a secret movement within that church that is very much hid from the public eye, but that does mix in elements of witchcraft.
Why do they practice witchcraft? For what reason?
I think witchcraft always is going to come down to the same thing. In a way, fear, or you want power, you want to know things that haven't been revealed to you, so you seek out means of finding that out. Possibly you want to charm spirits. And I'll give you an example. Long story short, I found out that not only was I dealing with Amish people around me that were cursing me, they wanted my house. They saw me as the outsider. They wanted me to lose it. I even had that where they had auctioneers call me and try to trick me into agreeing to sell the house at absolute auction. Anybody who's lived in Amish country long at all knows they fix auctions. So I would have lost everything. So they very much wanted that house. They harassed me a lot over it. They busted down the realtor signs. I have a lot detailed in the book about that. But the bottom line is simply this. That was a huge issue spiritually and just the mental stress of dealing with them. There were other issues. That property itself had a very dark secret, okay? Now, as a Christian, my way of dealing with that is, okay, if there's another power here that's not of God, then I'm going to come against that with the power of God. Their perspective is, if there's something here that's evil, I'm going to charm it so it brings me good luck, or it, helps me to have a happy life or whatever. I actually, I've researched this a lot after I, come to find out a lot of these things. And I own one of their witchcraft books in paperback. I won't even keep it in my house. I have it in a safety deposit box at a bank because I don't want it in my house. But it's one of their books. It's called Powwow or Long Lost Friend. And it documents all. I mean, some of this stuff just sounds like it would be silly good luck stuff. Some of it is very sinister. Like, for instance, it says if you have epilepsy, take a dove, cut its throat, drink the blood. That is strictly forbidden in the Bible to do something like that. But that's what I'm saying. They use the Bible where it's convenient. When it's not, they bring in their witchcraft. Okay, so their point is, a lot of what's in Powwow or Long Lost Friend is, if you want good luck in games of chance, do this. If you want your cows to produce more milk, do this. It's always these things where they're charming spirits, okay? So that is one reason. And what powwow actually is, and it's interesting because that came to me, they're practicing witchcraft and then old world witchcraft. Powwow is a mixture of the witchcraft from their ancestors in Germany and places in Europe, and it's mixed with the witchcraft of American Indians that were here when their ancestors came. So that's what powwow is. So it is a mixture of old world witchcraft. So that was one of the things I was up against. But as well, the situation involving, a curse that was over that area.
Now, when you purchased that property, did you get any resistance in buying it?
No, and I think the reason why, at that point, the Amish people, they had no idea what kind of house I was going to build. They knew nothing about me at that point, but the Amish couple that sold it to us told us they were selling it for what they had paid for it because they had a piece of land given to them in Kidron, Ohio. That's what they claimed. Well, we always believed that. Long story short, when it was all said and done, and I did an exorcism on that property, and the place sold almost overnight after the exorcism. Going through everything with my realtor after that, she's like, "Hey, Pat, look at this." And the bottom line was they had jacked the price through the roof when they sold it to us. We didn't know that, so they had jacked the price way up. And my thing is, I don't expect anyone to not want to make a profit. That's not the issue. The issue is they shouldn't have lied about it. They should have said, here's our asking price. End of discussion. We, maybe we'll negotiate, maybe we won't, but we're not going to, I would not have lied and said that I paid that for it when I paid substantially less, like about a third of what they ask. So, that was the point. They were making a killing off of us, so they were just fine with us at that point. The other thing I found out was one of the gentlemen who I come to realize was actually a witch. And when I say that, in real witchcraft, they don't necessarily call a male witch a warlock. A witch is a witch, whether they're male or female. And this gentleman came to me and asked me to give him a right-of-way that went the entire length of my property and let him put in a lane back to his property behind me. And I said, I'm sorry, that'll devalue my property. I can't even sell you a right-of-way. It's not worth it to me. I'm sorry. I was very respectful, very kind, but I said no. When I did that, it was like, who are you to tell me no? You're in Holmes County. This county is run by the Amish. I'm Amish. You're not. You just messed up. Oh, my. And I believe that was part of what started a lot of what was going on. I believe that wholeheartedly. And interestingly enough, I heard then that gentleman was a witch and his daughter was a witch. And his daughter had gotten into it to the point where she was having mental issues, which I believe was demon possession. And the other interesting part, so I heard that way back then when I started, there were a few people that came around that told me some things. And interestingly enough, the kind of witchcraft they were involved in, as it's passed down from generation to generation, it always has to be passed from one parent to a child of the opposite sex as it's passed down through the generations. And I was like, well, that's interesting because his daughter was into it, he was into it, so a lot of the things, I was able to substantiate. But I can tell you this. One thing I learned, not only, the power of the kingdom of darkness is real. It's very real. I did, get evidence that those things were going on around me. The pictures are in the book. There's, as you know, there's a trailer I put together on YouTube that I take you to some of these places that are Amish land where they're practicing Satanism, and it's not even just witchcraft. It's Satan.
But Patrick, on your video, you explain how you investigated the land that you were on, and can you go from there on that one?
Yeah, in 2009, I started having like very strange bad luck, we'll call it. Very strange things. I go into more detail in the book what I'm referring to, but I was like, okay, how can this be happening? This is just crazy, So then I was thinking about it one day, and I was like, isn't it interesting? Right about the time all this quote-unquote bad luck started, I started noticing a cow skull hanging from my neighbor's tree.
Oh, that's right.
And I thought, man, that's weird. So I started doing some research. I'm convinced 100% that guy was into witchcraft as well. That wasn't even the same guy that was a witch that lived on the other side of me. And when I say they were my neighbors, they were like fields in between us. But it was his land. And I started praying, and I actually I talked to a pastor that believed in a lot of this stuff. He never offered to come to the property, and I never asked him. I didn't really know what to do. But group from his church, they were coming to his house for a Bible study, and he said, hey, you want to hang around? You're welcome to. Well, I knew a couple of the people there, so I stuck around. And at the end of it all, they said, we're going to pray for you. And they did. They laid hands on me and they prayed for me. They did not know the details of what I was experiencing, okay? But they prayed. 2 days later, that skull was gone. I have no idea why they took it down. Everything turned around. All this quote-unquote bad luck stopped, okay? About a year after that, I go back, after I had sold the place, I go back to get a few items. The exact same place, same little clearing off to the side of the road where the cow skull was, there's a dead dog hanging in a tree by its foot.
I know. I wasn't going to show the viewers that picture. It made me sick.
Yeah, you talk about, I love animals, and I'll tell you what, I was furious. I was furious. And that's the thing, people get all bent out of shape, when I say a lot of Amish are involved in witchcraft or whatever. Well, I'm sorry, you didn't live there, you didn't experience it. So are you going to explain this picture to me? The other thing is I have police reports for all this stuff. Of course, when I found that, I called the sheriff. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, Holmes County, the Amish own the sheriff because he is an elected official. And he would never prosecute them when I caught them trespassing. When they would harass me, he would never prosecute them. I called them when I found that dog. Well, I later went back and I said I want all the records from that house. Anytime that you were called by me, I want the records. Well, because of FOIA, they have to do that. Freedom of Information Act, they have to give me that. So they did. I went through their police records. You know what they said? Now, obviously, anyone, I showed other police officers that picture. They were like, that's Satanism. I said, of course, I believe that too. And they said, it 100% that's Satanism, okay? Well, the sheriff's report said that, yeah, it looks like maybe that dog got hit by a car or something. Oh, yeah, right. And that's the end of the report. Never addressed the fact that it's hanging in a tree by its foot. It didn't look like it was hit by a car. That's all, They would not even address the fact that it was another sign of what's going on out there. So those things are, they're real.
Well, I have pictures of you. The video that you put together was really awesome. And I have pictures of you driving to the area and showing everybody the woods where Satanic Rituals took place. And I'm showing those pictures now, Patrick.
Yeah, that location. I ran across some people that started telling me what was going on, and they started really enlightening me to what was really going on in Holmes County. And it all supported what I knew. But it was a breath of fresh air that some people were helping me finally. These weren't Amish people. The one gentleman had been raised by an Amish family, but he never joined the church. And he's the one who told me about the curse on the land. And he told me some horror stories about the Amish community. He really did. Well, I went out there and investigated. I've been there repeatedly. And I got photo evidence. I got, pictures of all these things at night and during the day.
Can I ask you one thing?
Yes.
Oh, so you found out that the land was cursed. Was it just those acres that you were on, or was it in a wide range of acres?
Well, it was much larger than my area. I had the legal, spiritually speaking, the legal right to take authority over my land. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now. Here's my opinion, and I will explain my opinion. It's a much larger area than what I owned. I believe that it is all goes back to a curse that was put over the land that American Indians lost from the Greenville Treaty. Now, when I say that, it sounds crazy, but let me remind you. Canton, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Akron, Ohio. 3 of the cities in the United States with the worst violent crime in the entire nation. The Greenville Treaty Line starts at the mouth of the Cuyahoga River, which is now Cleveland, Ohio. Okay? It goes south. It goes through Cleveland, Akron, Canton. Below Canton, it goes to Bolivar. Bolivar, Ohio, it goes southwest. It goes out into Holmes County, through right by my property. The treaty line was right by my property. Then out not far from my house, then it turns and goes more westerly. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Canton, Ohio, number 2 in the nation for violent crime for cities under 100,000 population. Canton, Ohio is nowhere near 100,000 population. It's number 2 in the nation. Ohio was just named number 2 in the nation for drug overdose deaths, like heroin deaths. Okay, you got these 3 areas that are just full of crime, full of all kinds of bad stuff. Even Browns fans and Indians fans always talk about Cleveland being cursed, and they call it the curse of Chief Wahoo.
Oh.
That's the little Indian mascot. They can't win a championship, all this, Even the Cleveland fans joke about these things. And my perspective is it's really not a joke. Bolivar, Ohio is very, very haunted. Okay, yes, there were battles fought there. Fort Laurens is right there. That's all true. But it's also a cursed area. Right where you get off of Highway 77 North to go to Bolivar, Ohio, to your right, there's a huge sign. And it says that there's a canoe livery and haunted tours right there, because they know Bolivar and Zor, those 2 areas right there, are very, very haunted.
Wow.
My belief is that it is haunted because of that curse.
Oh my God. So you went into the woods, and you were searching for the area where they practice these satanic rituals, and you found the barn. Talk about that barn.
Okay, I had a friend, and at this point I've met multiple people who witnessed that barn when it was standing. And the barn was a place that was where they actually did the satanic meetings inside of it, okay? This is Amish land owned by the Amish. The barn was Amish owned, okay? So when they want to deny that it's them, I'm sorry, people don't come to my property and practice Satanism on my property without me knowing it, so why would they do it to them? The barn later was burnt down. And but the people I know who were in there, they don't even know each other. I have 2 groups of friends that are not friends with each other. And they both told me the same stories. When you went in there were animal body parts laying around. There was a pentagram on the wall. No question about it. They practice Satanism there. It's very well known. So that area was not right on top of where I live. That was farther into Holmes County. That area is called Panther Hollow. But no question about it, Satanism is alive and well there. I'm aware of a place in Mount Hope, Ohio, where the Amish have a satanic cult. I know someone who actually was invited there by a girl that he worked with at a garage door place, a garage door factory in Holmes County, befriended a girl that was Amish. She invited him to meet her family. He goes to meet her family. It's not meeting her family, it's a witchcraft meeting. And she told him to wear all black. Well, he thought, the Amish don't like bright colors. I'll wear black, He gets there, it's not. It's a witchcraft meeting. The area where I lived was eastern Holmes County. Witchcraft, again, why was there a cow skull hanging from a tree? Why was there a dead dog hanging from a tree? I was also told that someone living near me, but they would not give up the information. I was told that a gentleman, through witchcraft, had taken a rabbit, skinned it alive, and kept its skin as part of this satanic thing
my
he was doing.
God, I can't stand to hear those. Oh my God.
Me neither. I love animals, and it just makes me sick to even think of that. But so the bottom line is, witchcraft and Satanism and these things are alive and well in Holmes County. That's the bottom line.
You also found some trees that had some markings. I'm showing them the one with death spelled backwards.
Yes, and that, of course, if you know anything about Satanism, Aleister Crowley, Anton LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible, but he really stole a lot of Aleister Crowley's ideas. Aleister Crowley was known as the Beast 666. He was called that by his own mother. He was so evil. Aleister Crowley, had a lot of writings on Satanism, all kinds of messed up stuff. He was a very evil individual. He encouraged his followers to think backwards, spell backwards, talk backwards, write backwards, everything. So to me, when I see death on a tree backwards, it's clear to me what that is. It's like, yeah, these people really know what they're doing, and they're really into it, And why else would you write it backwards, But there were 666 on the trees, all kinds of satanic signs.
Well, can I ask you about the picture I'm showing them now? Did you take that picture?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you notice the foggy substance next to the tree?
When I was taking those, I was just taking them and hoping something would be in the pictures.
And it was.
I have another picture. I have much more I'm going to share in a future book as well. But I have other pictures where I just simply lightened them a little bit, and there were orbs all over the place. You could see that the orbs were moving horizontally.
Yeah, but it's not the orb, Patrick. It's the foggy substance off to the side.
Right. Yeah, there was... I'll give you another story. I have a picture that I will share in the future. One of my friends who introduced me to this area, he had been there before me. And he happened to go there with some of his friends and his brother. And when they got there, it just happened to be on a night when those people were having a meeting. And he said off in the field, there was a pentagram burning. And they could see people, way off in the field having this meeting up on a hill. And he took a picture of it. Well, when they're leaving, or they're driving home, and he's in a different car than his brother, and his brother calls him and says, pull over, I have to show you something, because they're in multiple cars. So he pulls over, and they meet up, and his brother's like, look, the picture that they took of the burning pentagram, there was no pentagram in the picture. It's like, how do you take a picture of something and then it's not even there? But what's more interesting, when they started looking at the picture, they were like, what is this little weird light area on the side of the picture? So all they did was lighten the picture slightly. Mm-hmm. Plain as day, it looks like there's a man's face standing there staring at you.
Wow. No
question about it, okay? So it's like, the interesting thing is, number one, here's the face. That was not there. They could not see that with the naked eye. But here, where'd the pentagram go? That's what they took the picture of, So, I remember even back probably late 70s, early 80s, there was an article in the Times Reporter, which was the local newspaper when I was a kid, still is in the area I live in. And it said that the Holmes County sheriff at that time, which obviously is not the same sheriff as today, he said that there was a satanic cult in Holmes County. They had found a decapitated horse and some things, and he said that there was a satanic cult in Holmes County. Clear back in the early 80s, late 70s, they were saying that.
Oh my God. You also discovered other existence of satanic worship in those woods. I'm showing them the tree with 666 on it.
Yes.
Another one with, there it is, with the 666. Mm-hmm. And then you found a tree also that said, "We the burned." What do you think that means?
To me, they there's a tree out there that says the devil will rise.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, they know who they follow. They know what their ultimate, people that do these things, they're like, hey, I'm going to hell, but it's going to be a party. Ha ha, all my friends will be there, whatever. They don't get what they're really messing with. It's like they're making light of something that they should be taking very serious. I think that's just, hey, yeah, we're going to burn. Who cares? That's what I really believe that is. They were so blatant right there. The devil will rise right there on another tree. They were so blatant. They don't care. They do it under the cover of darkness, but they are pretty pretty blatant with it. And, in that area, I still don't know what causes this, but you can be there in broad daylight and you will hear a sound that you can't pinpoint where it's coming from. It almost sounds like monks. It's a very deep, like a humming sound. I can't tell what it is.
Oh, my God. Are you still in that house now?
No. The good news, by the end of 2009, I had these things shared with me, and me and two other individuals did a very, very thorough exorcism on that property and house. And the activity stopped. No more paranormal activity after that. Within 60 days, now keep in mind that house had been on the market probably 2 years and 10 months. Okay? Within 60 days of the exorcism, I was gone. I was out of there. The house sold. I was done. I was out. I moved.
Thank God.
So that was the positive review. And I don't believe by sharing the happy story at the end just gives the book away by any means. There's a lot more to share, that's in details. But the one thing I believe I'm supposed to share this is, I understand what it's like to be oppressed. I understand what it's like to feel. I mean, when you're in that environment, they will mess with you. They will make you feel like life's not worth living. They will make you feel like there is no hope. God hates you. Everybody hates you, and God hates you. Just kill yourself and get it over with. By the grace of God, I could see through that, even though I felt really bad a lot because of the oppression. I could fight back, but the one thing is, I believe I didn't experience that in vain. I believe that I can empathize with people now in a way that I couldn't before. And I believe that, by sharing that story and going into detail, which I do in both books, I go into detail how you deal with this stuff. Other people have a chance at having their nightmare, end. They can wake up and they can move on with their life and survive and live a life that was being held back from them while they were in that environment.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. Now, the next one I want you to talk about is the 2020 Fifth Street. Now, are you in this house now?
No, it's actually 220 Fifth Street, the number 220, and it's on 5th Street. And interestingly enough, the nightmare in Holmes County ended. The girl I was dating at the time, I was scrambling because Mennonites bought that other house and they didn't give me much time to get out of there. So I was looking for another house. She helps me find this other house. And it's a old, completely brick house, built in the 1920s. Nice little lot, has a huge detached garage. And I'm like, okay, this will be fine. I'll buy this house, So I go to a realtor has it listed, and he actually bought it at a sheriff's sale and redid the inside of it, repainted everything, put down new carpet, everything, and was flipping it. And I said, I still got to wait for my loan to close because I had to get a mortgage on 225th Street. And I said, I really don't want to have to move twice and uproot my pets and move them twice. And he said, I'll tell you what, I know you're going to get your mortgage. Go ahead and move in. He said, we'll settle up as when your loan closes, we'll settle up. Don't worry about it. So that was very kind of him. Okay, so I move in to 225th Street, and I'll never forget my first night living in the house. We had worked all day. It was like a snowstorm that day that I moved. It was like blizzard conditions. It was terrible. And I go upstairs, and I found there was a strange little room upstairs that was kind of L-shaped, where they had taken part of the room to expand the bathroom upstairs. So I go to that little room, and I just laid down on the floor with a blanket, and my two cats were there with me. And I'm laying on the floor, and I'm staring at this old closet door in that room. I knew nothing about the house, but I'm just looking at that closet door, and I started thinking, boy, the guy that built this house really had good workmanship. And all of a sudden, I had mentioned before that, I would have, I believe there's times that the Holy Spirit or God will speak to people and tell them things, And out of the blue, just like that thought that came into my mind out of nowhere that said they're practicing witchcraft, this time it came into my mind and it said, you don't know anything about the history of this house.
Oh.
it was not like I had this conscious thought that, hey, I don't know anything about the history of this house. The thought was, you don't know anything about the history of this house. And then I thought to myself, that's true, I don't. And I said a prayer that was the kind of prayers I had learned to pray in Holmes County, binding demons, whatever, because I was like, I don't know anything about this house. What if, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to pray the way I prayed in Holmes County. And I did. The kind of somewhat uneasy feeling dissipated, and I went to sleep. There were little minor things that would happen, like in the first week, but I would write them off. I would be like, yeah, whatever, that's nothing. Don't let your imagination get the best of you, just forget it. And one night, about a week after I initially moved in, I went upstairs to my bedroom, and I opened the door, and my bed was sitting crooked. And this was at the upstairs bedroom to the left of the bathroom. And I thought, how'd that happen? And so I convinced myself that, okay, well, I had a cousin that did electrical wiring, and he came in and was wiring in some outlets for satellite television and, some things like that to make the house a little more modern. And so I knew he had been done in that room. He worked on that room as soon as I moved in and got done like the first day, just so I would be able to make that my bedroom, Well, but I convinced myself. I said, he must have come up here, and for some reason he worked on an outlet, and he moved my bed. Tomorrow I'm going to ask him. I'm sure that's all it is. So I straightened my bed. I laid down in bed. Now I had my bedroom door shut, but when I shut my eyes to go to sleep, in my mind's eye, I believe this was a vision. And the reason I say that, when we picture something in our mind, it's not crystal clear. The definition of the image is not razor sharp. What I saw in my mind's eye was, highly detailed, very colorful. And what I saw was the staircase outside my bedroom door. It was like as if I was standing outside the bedroom door looking down the staircase. There was a hooded figure coming up the staircase. And it looked like an old man. And he looked like he was dead. Mm. He was thin. He was round-shouldered. He kind of slouched when he walked. And he was coming up the stairs, and he had a creepy grin on his face. And I opened my eyes, and I thought, what in the world was that? Because it was like, you shut your eyes, and boom, you have this thing going on in your mind. Like, it was very abnormal. And I shut my eyes. There it was again. This happened 3 or 4 times, and after the last time, I opened my eyes and I said out loud again. Now, granted, I knew nothing about the history of this house, so I said a very generic prayer. I simply said, I renounce every sin that's ever happened in this house in Jesus' name, and I bind the demons and command you to get out. Something to that effect, very generic. And everything, the creepy feeling went away. I shut my eyes. The vision was gone. I fell asleep. I told 4 people that story. Yeah. And I'm glad I did. I told 4 people that story, and the following weekend, my neighbor came over. And I began having other strange things in the house, like a pipe broke, and water, it was like it was raining inside the house, And I was like, when that happened, at that point I started being more vocal about my feelings, and I said, if I didn't know better, I would swear something followed me from Holmes County. But I know it couldn't have, because I know that exorcism was successful, or I would still be there, the house would never have sold, So, but I'm having these weird thoughts, and my neighbor comes over, and he introduces himself, really a super nice guy. And that was on Saturday. Sunday, he comes back, introduces me to his girlfriend, who's with him at that time. And he says, hey, I want you to know that, you're welcome here in this community. And he said, we all help each other. He said, I'm an electrician, this one guy down the street works on cars, whatever. This other guy's a plumber, whatever. He says, if you need any help with anything, we all help each other. You let one of us know and we'll help you. And I said, well, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And he said, well, that's the good news. Now for the bad news. And when he said that, now keep in mind, I just met this guy. And I knew what he was going to say. And I looked at him and I said, you're going to tell me my house is haunted. And his eyes got big, his mouth dropped open, and he said, yeah, man, your house is haunted. He said, some dude killed himself in your basement a long time ago.
Oh, my God.
And I turned around and I looked at my mom and I said, I told you. And my sister and my brother-in-law are standing there on the porch. They had stopped by, too. And my sister's like, what? And my mom's like, he told me that he thought it was. And they're like, not again, you know. And I said, I've dealt with this before. I'll deal with it again. And then this gentleman in the book, his name is Steve. That's not his real name. But he said, hey, I got some other stuff to tell you, but I'll tell you later. And he leaves. That's kind of his thing. He was a super nice guy, but he would get me right on the edge of the cliff with one of his stories, and then he'd be like, oh, I got to go. I'll talk to you later, you know.
Oh, my God.
But I started researching at that point, and I believed, okay, we overcame this in the other house. I'll overcome it again, you know. So I start doing research, and at that point, I had already started writing Nightmare in Holmes County. And isn't this interesting? I would be sitting upstairs in the office. I converted one of the bedrooms into an office at 225th Street. I would be sitting up there writing Nightmare in Holmes County, not knowing that the house I'm sitting there writing in is haunted as well, you know. So it's kind of ironic.
Oh, you poor thing. Oh, my God.
At that point, I was like, okay, this is going to sound crazy when I say this, but at that point, I was like, I knew Nightmare in Holmes County is to be written second. It'll be written as a prequel. You're going to write about this house first, and the title of this book is going to be 225th Street. I already knew that. And that's what I did. I put Nightmare in Holmes County on the back burner. I put all my energy into it. Became like an obsession, to be totally honest. All this research. And I started tracking down anybody I could find that had lived in that house. And the interesting part, you know, I found many people had lived in that house, several families, and none of those families had ever shared with any of the other families that they had sold the house to. They had never shared anything with them about the suicide or that they believed the house was haunted. They would sell it to somebody else and move, and they wouldn't tell them. So as I started researching, and I'm contacting people, and you know, it was kind of funny. I would call somebody up, a cold call, people that didn't even know me, and I would say, I'm Patrick Meechan, and I'm buying a house that you used to live in at 225th Street, and you have every right to think I'm crazy for what I'm going to ask you, but I have to ask you, did you ever have anything strange happen to you there? And without fail, they'd be like, yeah, that place is haunted. You know, they would just start telling me stories.
Oh, my
And but none of them ever told the other families their stories. And the interesting part is, as I'm collecting all this information, their stories are all very similar. And then I start having more experiences that are similar to theirs, you know. So, needless to say, that was not I lived in that house 3 months, and it was not a comfortable 3 months. It was, you know, both of those houses were demonic in origin. The hauntings were demonic, no question. But there was a different feel. There was a feeling at 225th Street that once I knew what was going on there, when I would pull up in front of the house at night after work, like just even coming down the street, this horrible, just awful feeling would come over me. I felt like when I would get out of the car and walk into the house, the only way I know to describe it is I felt like I was walking into hell. Because I knew that I was walking into an environment that was possessed, and what was there was very, very nasty.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Now, how do you know that it was demonic and not just a bad negative spirit?
I'll be honest, my perspective is everything I've ever dealt with haunting-wise or spiritually has always been either angelic if it's good or demonic if it's bad. But when you go back into like these details, what I believe when I found out about the suicide, usually, number one, you have things that are hooded figures. Even, you know, people in the paranormal community that believe in, you know, some hauntings are ghosts, some hauntings are demons, whatever. Pretty much they're going to say, yeah, you got black stuff, you got hooded figures, that's demonic, you know. And I knew, you know, my first thing that, you know, was kind of substantial was that vision of this hooded figure. It looked like an old man, you know. I believed then when I found out about the suicide, I was like, whatever this is, it's not him. It's something that's here because of him killing himself, and it probably drove him to it. And as I started contacting people, and I would say, you know, do you know anything about a hooded figure? They would freak out. They would be like, you know, in some cases they'd start to cry. And they would say, I can't believe you're bringing this up. Yes, I know what you're talking about. And it would either go, the story would say I saw it, or it would be I would dream about it all the time when I was there. You know, there was this about a 7 foot tall black like shadow person, witnessed by multiple people, including my own mother witnessed it. She was on a ladder in the kitchen cleaning the cupboards for me, and so she's on a step ladder, and it goes right past her through the room and disappears back towards the back bedroom at the back of the house. And she said, I was on a ladder and it was taller than me. And I said, stand on this ladder. We figured it out, her height. Here's how high she was off the ground. That's the same thing that these other people saw, because they said it was about 7 feet tall, you know?
Oh, my God.
And the other thing was, as I did more research, and again, I went back and I got police reports, because I know there's always going to be skeptics and there's going to be people who are going to say I'm a liar or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, well, I have police reports, and, you know, the cops were called there 27 times, I believe it was, in, you know, 10 years or something. I'm forgetting off the top of my head the exact amount of years. But this is a quiet little town that reminds you of Mayberry. And the police are called to this house 20-some times. And they were called there for things not only where attempted murder in the house, people saying that they heard gunshots in the house, things that they could not explain. A gas valve in the basement got turned on, filled the whole house full of gas, could have easily killed the woman that lived there. You know, all sorts of things like this, things coming up missing, so they assumed somebody stole it, called the police, you know, over and over and over during that time. And so I did my homework. I got the police reports, but then I also went back and contacted the people who had, you know, contacted the police. And their stories, pretty much, they had no qualms about saying, yeah, this is demonic, because I know how I felt when I was there. And the first family I contacted, they had lived there. They were the family that bought the house from the family of the gentleman who killed himself. And by the way, the suicide was March 1st, 1958, is when the suicide happened in the house, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I believe wholeheartedly. I moved into that house the very end of February. About a week after I moved in, roughly, about a week later is when that incident happened with the vision of the hooded figure. I have to believe that was March 1st, 2010, that happened, because I went back and I looked at, okay, here's what I know happened this day. I did this after I moved in. That had to be March 1st. So it's very interesting that would have happened. You know, I had a vision about something that happened in 1958.
Around the anniversary.
On the anniversary, yeah. And so I contact these people, and I contact first the husband, that him and the wife had divorced. Then I say, you know, I cover this in the book again, that usually in those environments, the husband and wife aren't going to stay married if they don't get help. But I contacted the husband, and he kind of chuckled to himself, and he said, you know, you need to talk to my ex-wife. He said, she swore that place was haunted. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, absolutely. She swore it was. Here's her phone number. Call her. Tell her I told you to call, you know. Well, after I spoke to him and I talked to his wife, you know, he realizes when I told him my name, he didn't put it all together. He realized that he had met me before. His brother knew me. And he's like, okay, this isn't some crazy guy. I know this guy, you know. And so he called me the next day, and he said, you know, he goes, I realized I do know who you are. You're not crazy. And he said, you know, I got to thinking about all this. And he said, I wrote off a lot of experiences over the years that, you know, now I probably shouldn't have, you know. And he started sharing some stories as well. But when I talked to her, she starts going through these stories. Now, I'll give you one of them. For instance, she said, we took the bedroom upstairs at the top of the stairs to the left of the bathroom. That's the same bedroom I used, by the way. And she said, you know, one time I was in there and I was cleaning, and she said in the far right corner, we had a dresser sitting in the corner. She said, I'm in there cleaning. I have my back to the dresser and I'm sweeping or whatever. And she said, I turned around and the dresser had been moved. It was sitting at a completely different angle.
Oh.
Now, what in the world are the chances that's the same room that my bed was sitting in that same area and was moved?
Yes.
You know, and then she says, you know, we had this dog, and the little dog would get off the bed and go to the doorway. Its hair would stand on end. It would stare out into the landing. It would freak out. It would go crazy, but we couldn't see what it saw, and it was scared to death. It would, you know, very aggressive. She said one time she was standing in the kitchen, and there was a tea kettle full of water, and the tea kettle lifted itself up in the air. It lifted up in the air by itself, flipped over, and then slammed down on the counter and spilt the water everywhere.
Now, how long were you in this house?
I was in the house 3 months.
3 months. Did you ever try? Did you ever try to get anybody to come in to find out who was haunting the house, or did you also try to bless and do an exorcism on the house?
Yeah. We tried an exorcism, and I was very confident going in. I thought, hey, what I dealt with in Holmes County was nasty. You know, we can deal with this. It'll be okay. But here's the interesting part. When we did the exorcism, we attempted it. I had only talked to a couple people that had been there. I did not have all the details. I did not have all the information by any means, okay? There were still people I needed to talk to that had lived there that I hadn't yet. We are attempting this exorcism. I start having strange things happen. And to this day, I'm going to tell you one of the experiences that I still cannot explain. I'm standing near the kitchen. There were a doorway that went from the kitchen into what was like the dining room area, and then a door that went into what the living room was. My brother-in-law is standing, and it's me and my mother and my sister and my brother-in-law doing the exorcism. He's standing in the front living room. I'm standing more like between where the dining room door that enters into the kitchen is, and I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden, it's the weirdest thing. It looked like I was seeing him, but he was in an old movie. It looked like, you know how in an old film you see the lines going up and down?
Yeah.
What in the world that means, I cannot tell you. But I saw it, and I thought, that is weird, you know? So we start going through the house, and again, I don't even really know what to renounce other than I know there was a suicide there. So I'm renouncing the suicide and things like that, and we got anointing oil, and we're going from room to room. And it felt like the temperature dropped substantially. And I believe this is what Ed Warren termed a psychic cold. Oh. It's not necessarily that the temperature really is as cold as everybody feels, but it's bone chilling. Like, it feels like it's a coldness that gets deep into your body, you know? And we all started experiencing this. And at one point, we go upstairs, and I'm standing on that landing again outside of that bedroom. I have my back towards the bedroom, and I had my eyes shut, and I am basically rebuking what is in the house, telling it that you're going to leave. Again, now here's the weird part. You know, I say I have visions. People are welcome to call me crazy, but when I explain this, it's pretty interesting. I, again, saw in my mind's eye, it looked like a guy about 30 years old. I'm 6'4". He was around 6 feet tall. He had brown hair. He had a medium build. And he came up and stared at me like he wanted to kill me. He hated me. And I saw it. He came up and stared at me while I was praying, and then it was like he spun around and disappeared down the staircase. It's very strange the way I saw it.
Oh my God!
I stopped praying, and I said, something just sized me up, okay? And I said, I don't know what that was, but I said it hates me, and I said it does not like me praying. And we continued with the exorcism. At one point, everyone else was in the bedroom that was beside the room that I was in. And I heard a commotion, so I knew something happened. And I went over, and I said, what happened? I walked in the room. I said, what happened? And they said that my brother-in-law was anointing the windows and the door, and he said, I do this in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And when he said that, my mother said, and we do this in agreement with Matt. Because there's power in praying in agreement. There's no question, So that's why you always want to, if you're going to do an exorcism, you're better off doing it multiple people if you can, Mm-hmm. Well, when my mother said, we pray this in agreement with Matt, they all heard like a creepy voice mock her and say, agreement with Matt. And they all heard it. And I walked in, I didn't hear it, but I knew something happened because they were all kind of in a commotion, and they all had the same story. We all heard this. So we, continued. We went by that time, we eventually made our way to the basement. And I didn't know at what room in the basement the suicide happened in at that point. I had no idea. I just knew that somewhere in the basement a suicide happened. And we tried and we tried to get the stuff to leave. And at one point, my mom started getting a very sharp pain in her stomach where she had had surgery years earlier, out of the blue, had not had any pain in that area. It felt like somebody was stabbing her. And I said, you know what, I don't know why, but I said, what's here is not leaving. I said, I need to learn, I need to know more about this. So we need to call it quits. So we at that point ended the exorcism. And, as more time went by, I continued my research. I located a woman who had lived in the house last before me. She had lost everything while she lived there.
Oh, God.
Including her husband.
Oh, my God.
And one of her sons.
Oh, my God. Did that house bring you bad luck the short time that you were in there?
You wouldn't believe the crazy things.
Oh, my
God. I mentioned that, there were police reports where they called, other people called the police about, my stuff's missing. Somebody must have come and stolen my stuff, Well, when I was living there, somebody hacked into a UPS shipping account that I had set up that I had never used. I'd set it up just to check shipping prices, and somebody had hacked into that and sent over $4,000 worth of phony money orders to all these people all over the place. Now, when I say over $4,000, I'm not saying the money orders were over $4,000. I'm saying the shipping costs for overnight envelopes were over $4,000. And they were all getting returned to me because the people they were sent to wouldn't accept them because they didn't know what it was. So they're coming to me at 225th Street, and I'm like, I didn't send this. What in the world, They eventually said it was fraud, and they shut the whole thing down. I wasn't charged anything. But that was just like one really oddball, weird thing that happened. But, in the book, I detail all these things that other people experienced there. That's one of the weird reoccurring things in that house is that your stuff will be stolen. You will be defrauded out of things, out of money. All things will come up missing, all sorts of things like this. But the interesting part, as I contact that woman that had lived there, and she had lost her son while she lived there. Her husband passed away. Her son moves in. He chooses the bedroom upstairs to the left of the bathroom, okay? And he starts telling his mom that he hears someone walking in the attic at night. He goes to the attic. There's no one there. The attic door opens by itself, things like that. Well, there can be backdrafts in attics. That all makes sense, but that's not going to explain footsteps. I tracked down not only her, but his fiance that he was engaged to when he died. And she said, no, I was there with him. She goes, yeah, the attic door would slam open against the wall. She said, all kinds of, weird things would happen. Well, interestingly enough, according to his mother, his behavior changed drastically while he lived there. He would begin saying things that were strange enough that she would say, who said that? Like to herself, she would say, who said that? He doesn't talk like that, Mm-hmm. Well, he gets a motorcycle. He starts riding it recklessly. His mom very sternly tells him, you need to stop this. I don't want to be scraping you off the road.
Oh, my God. He
He ignores her. He goes out, and he ends up dying in what I call an intentional accident. I don't believe he committed suicide, but he basically intentionally engaged in activity repeatedly that was pretty much guaranteed to kill him. And he was riding the motorcycle very recklessly. And I even tracked down the people that were at the scene that were there when he got killed, and they said, we took him aside and we said, listen, you have to stop this. If you're going to try to ride wheelies on your motorcycle, you have to have modifications made to it, or you're going to lose control and you're going to die. They said, you're going to start tank slapping when you have that front wheel off the pavement. And when you're tank slapping, whatever direction your handlebars are going, when you come down, you're going off the road and you're going to die. Well, obviously, he was riding a crotch rocket. Those can accelerate extremely fast. So you gun that, you're going very fast, very quickly. They took him aside, sat him down, had a very serious talk. Within a matter of a few minutes, he went out, did it again, lost control, went off the road into a ditch full of large boulders. Basically was splattered. I mean, I don't want to say that in a disrespectful manner, but that's his mother told me. She said his body was mangled.
Oh my God!
Interestingly enough,
how sad.
He was right around 30 years old. Off top, I have all the information exactly documented in the book. He was right around 29, 30 years old. He was 5'11" to 6 feet tall, 180 some pounds, brown hair. Now, what are the chances, and what I believe is what was in that house either oppressed him to the point through an attachment that it drove him to make very bad decisions, which led to his death, or potentially he became possessed. His mother has even told me, I think it's possible he got possessed by what was there. And it led to his death. But what are the chances? Okay, with me knowing nothing about him, and nothing about the gentleman committing suicide or anything, I have a vision of which, through my research, I determined the hooded figure looked like the guy who killed himself on March 1st, 1958. He was a 67-year-old man, and he went to the root cellar in the basement March 1st, put a rifle to the side of his head, and shot himself. Okay? What are the chances? I have a vision that looks, through my research, I determined that certainly what I saw looked just like that guy. What are the chances during an exorcism, something comes up and stares me down, looks exactly like the woman's son who died in this freak accident while he lived in the house. Now, I do not believe that either thing was them. If it was her son, he probably would have been happy that I was praying over the house, What was there hated me. And I believe they can take the form of people. And they're so arrogant, they'll certainly take the form of people that they drove to their death because they're proud of what they did. Those are just some of the details.
Oh my God. So you were there for 3 months, and what was the final straw to make you leave?
I came to the conclusion that, I'm living there, I'm having experiences. The people that I'm contacting are just opening up and telling me all this horrible stuff. And I think in a way was therapeutic to them because they never told other people their stories. And I think that, it did them good to tell me because I believed them. And they kind of got it off their chest. But
did you try one more time to pray to the house and try and do an exorcism just one last time?
I prayed every day after that. I didn't go through it every day and anoint it and go through a full-on exorcism. I came to the conclusion that, okay, there's something here that I don't know yet. There's something that's giving this thing a legal right to be here, and I don't know what it is yet. And it's not going to leave until I find that out. But eventually I came to the conclusion, just living there, okay, every time I walk down the stairs and then I turn and I get down the basement stairs and I go down to work out or whatever, I'm reminded that on March 1st, 1958, a man walked this same path with a rifle in his hand and went to the root cellar and killed himself. And I don't like that. I don't want to be here. And that's what I came to the conclusion. And I really came to the conclusion that I was to be at 225th Street to share the story, and the story didn't have a happy ending because sometimes these things don't, because there are spiritual principles in place. And I believe spiritual laws in place, and sometimes you have to be very thorough at closing doors that have been opened.
Oh my God!
I share in 225th Street. Some of the things I believe were legal rights. There's other things I don't discuss publicly that I believe were going on there that opened up some very, very nasty doors. And even were affecting people in houses around 225th Street because there were other people who had similar experiences living near me. But one thing I will say, and I bounced this off of multiple people, including Bob Larson, Bill Bean, different deliverance ministers, other people, Chris Quarantino, Christopher Lutz from the Amityville Horror, people that I've befriended over the years. That I believe it's a blessing to be friends with, that I think also have insight.
Well, did you ask any of them, like Bill Bean, to come into the house and see what he could do or what he thought?
No, I sent those people pictures and I gave them scenarios. Here's what I think is going on. What do you think? And without fail, they were like, absolutely, I agree with what you're saying. One of those things was simply this. When I determined that the suicide did happen in the root cellar, I went to the root cellar, and I was standing there, and I thought, there's some clue here I'm missing. I've already been through this room. There's something here I'm missing. And I'm standing there, and I'm looking around. I'm looking up at the rafters, and I look down at the floor, and I'm like, and there it is. There was a blood stain on the floor. root cellar had an old brick floor. It was just brick laid down over dirt. The gentleman had killed himself or shot himself. He fell on the floor. He was rushed to the hospital. He died later at the hospital. He didn't even die in the house. Technically the event that took his life happened there, but his blood was soaked into the brick of the floor. And my theory at that point was, okay, something here drove him to lose all hope and to take his own life, and he shed his blood. Even biblically speaking, the life is in the blood, the Bible says. That is where we have our life from. Our eternal life is in the blood of Jesus. So blood is very significant, So that gentleman's blood being on that floor, and these things drove him to do this, they're going to attach to that like a trophy, and they're going to say, hey, as long as that blood's here that I drove him to shed and take his own life, I'm not going anywhere. And I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care who you are. I'm not leaving, And I believe that was one of the very powerful legal rights in that house. But without fail, when I bounced that scenario off some people that were in the know, and like I said, Bob Larson, Bill Bean, Chris Quartino, different people, other deliverance ministers, Laura Maxwell, people like that, they all said the same. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I even went back to one of my old Sunday school teachers. It was a very, very devout Christian. And I explained it, and he said, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think you're right, So I think that, I could have probably dug out all that flooring, but at the same time, I was like, I had a police officer tell me, he said, Pat, I don't know if you've ever witnessed a suicide, but he said, when somebody shoots himself in the head, there's blood spatter that goes all over the place. He said, he goes, if you think that's what's causing it to be haunted, he said, you're never getting rid of it all.
Oh my God.
And I just came to the conclusion, I don't believe I'm at 225th Street to live here the rest of my life. I believe I'm here to investigate this haunting, share these truths, help the other people that lived here. I've made lasting friendships with people that lived there before me. The one old woman that lost her husband and her son, we're very close friends. We still talk,
Oh, that's wonderful.
And to me, that's a blessing, But one thing that everybody that I would talk to and that had lived there before me would say without fail, do you believe that what was there could have followed me?
Yes.
I would say, why? Do you think it did? Yes, I think it did.
Oh, no. Wait a minute. It followed you?
I believe it followed those people.
Oh.
I will tell you this. When I wrote 225th Street, I have experiences while I was writing the book that would blow your mind.
Oh, my God.
I know that these things do not want me to tell the story and to tell how to deal with them. So they did fight me on that. I went through a lot of strange things. And one of the things I will share, I think you're aware of this, right before I was complete with the book, well, a couple of things. I had, obtained the death certificate of the gentleman who killed himself. I had obtained the crash scene report from the gentleman who had, died in a motorcycle accident while he lived there, and as well as all these police reports. But I had received both of those reports the same day. It was a Friday afternoon. The next Saturday morning, I woke up and I thought, oh, wow, I woke up, but I don't have to get out of bed yet. I don't have to be at work for a little while. I'm going to sleep yet for a little bit. And I rolled over and I shut my eyes, and as plain as day, I heard what sounded like an old man's voice, and it went, Patrick, in the room with me. And I remember plain as day, I opened my eyes and I thought I could not have dreamed that because I was still awake, But another incident, I was laying in bed, and I think this was partly due to this investigation of this house, but also I was helping a family who was going through a very demonic situation at that time as well. But I was laying on my stomach in my bed, and I felt something tug on my right hand. And I felt it plain as day, and then I felt the bed shake. And I thought, I hope that's Moses, because I felt the bed shake. And then I had, again, one of these weird visions, and I saw, like in my mind's eye, something sitting on the bottom of the bed, and it was staring at me. It was squatted down, and it was staring at me. And it looked like a cross between an Indian and something you would have seen on an old Star Trek episode.
Oh, interesting.
It did not have a shirt on. It had a long black hair. It had a very flat face with a long, flat nose. And it was just staring at me like it was studying me. And I rebuked it. The situation ended. But as I'd shared this before on other broadcasts, that I'd shared this with a couple ladies I was friends with. We were having a Skype call about, weird experiences one time. And the one lady said, that sounds like Manitou. And I'm like, what's Manitou? And she said, look it up. And what I discovered was that was like a spirit of what the Indians called a spirit of suicide. So is that potentially related to 225th Street, considering that is one of the main things that I believe caused the haunting there? I think it's certainly possible. It's certainly interesting. But I had many experiences. And again, I'm not even getting into the tip of the iceberg yet about the things I experienced living there, the experiences of the other people that lived there. It definitely, there was a lot. It was a very, very dark environment. It was a very negative environment. I will be sharing even more stories of, I'll tell you right now, that haunting goes on. It's not over. There are stories I will share in a future book that will blow people's mind, that go right along. A big story right now in the paranormal field is missing 411 cases.
Yes, we did a show on that.
Yeah, my belief on that is, here's my belief as a Christian, and people can differ with me, that's fine, but my belief is, from my perspective, is there's two forces in this universe. There's God and there's Satan. There's good and there's evil. And when people are being murdered, that's certainly not God. That's evil, and whatever this is, it's paranormal and it's demonic. And that's my belief. Well, here's the interesting part. I will be sharing in a future book that one of the people in 225th Street died under those exact same circumstances as what the people in the missing 411 cases died.
But wait a minute, Patrick. On those missing persons, especially those in the forest, in the national parks, they would be there, and then the next minute, poof, they were gone.
Yes. How's that happen?
The portal?
Yeah, so it's something. And I do believe there are portals on this earth that go, and I'll be really honest with you. There's been times I believe there's areas that are very cursed where there are portals. I will give you an example. I have a picture in Nightmare in Holmes County of the front door of my house. There was a residue that formed on the door, on the window, that I believe looks like a face. But I have shared this picture with multiple people. I've had people have all kinds of weird experiences when I even emailed them the picture. I don't get into the whole psychic thing, but a lady I'm friends with that it does dabble in that. She had interviewed me on a paranormal show years ago. She's very respectful to my perspective. She's a nice person. I consider a friend. I sent her this picture. I said, I'm thinking about putting this in the book. You think I should or not? And I was only referring to the residue on the window looking like a face.
Yeah.
And she said, you got issues in that house. She said, that door was a portal. And she said, when I look at that, she said, I see there's a portal there and there's spirits coming and going through that door. Well, that's one of the things I shared in the book from my perspective, that, I wasn't even necessarily writing it from her perspective. I was writing it from what I experienced, and it all was corroborated from what, her take on it. I do believe that there are places where there are portals and demons come and go.
But the thing is, in like one case, I guess it was way back in the 1800s or 1900s, the fellow was walking on it right across his farm, and he was waving to his neighbors, and all of a sudden, as he's waving, poof, he's gone. Now, he went through that portal, or he disappeared, but what if somebody right behind him, maybe 5 minutes later, walked that same walk? Would they also have disappeared, or did these portals move?
That's a very good question. I do not know the answer to that. I will tell you, I believe some of them are stationary, and necessarily you wouldn't disappear into them, but spirits are coming in. I'll say that because there were times it crossed my mind when I was writing 225th Street, and I was having all kinds of experiences myself, that that whole house reminds me that it would be a portal. There's something there that's nasty. I feel like the whole place should be torn down. I've had thoughts like that. But I do believe, I do believe that's a possibility. And like I said, one of the gentlemen who lived in that house within the past 2 years disappeared, was found states away, dead, unexplained. I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name that wrote the Missing 411 cases.
Oh,
David Paulides.
Yeah.
He's now researching. He said he was never going to go into some of the urban cases, but now he said they're so prevalent he has to. And there's certain characteristics when these are happen in populated areas more as opposed to the out in the wilderness in the national parks. And he's describing. I heard him on an interview describing them, and it's like exactly like this case with this gentleman who used to live at 225th Street. So I think these things are. I don't think anything to be taken lightly. I'll go again now. I talk about even Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in Nightmare in Holmes County, and the reason I mention it is, okay, you have the Mothman stuff happening there. This creature, nobody knows what that thing is,
No.
but all kinds of horrible stuff happening to people, terrible tragedies, all kinds of things over and over and over. Well, interestingly enough, in my opinion, that goes back to a curse from the Indians, very similar to what I was dealing with in Holmes County. Chief Cornstalk, as he was called, was murdered in what is now Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Many, many years ago, he was murdered unfairly, and when he was dying, he cursed the land. Now, it's interesting that's documented that he did that, and now you have in that area one tragedy after another: paranormal activity, UFO activity, Mothman, on and on and on it goes. In my opinion, from my perspective, there's always going to be a common denominator when these things are happening, and in my opinion, it's demonic.
Wow.
And I would love to visit Point Pleasant. I haven't. I was called on to go there to do an exorcism last summer, and then the person that was saying they needed the exorcism backed out, so we never did it. But I think those things are all relevant.
Wow. Well, they said that Mothman would show himself when an imminent disaster was going to happen. But from
Yes.
what I understand, there hasn't been any sightings for a while.
You know what? I've heard all the real notorious cases were older, but I have heard, but I haven't confirmed or talked to anyone that told me this directly, that there have been random things that are pretty, somewhat minor, like people think they saw stuff. But you're right. I don't know of anything real substantial lately.
Yeah. Well, so are you writing another book on this?
Yeah, I'm going to do. I have multiples to do. I'm going to write a book flat out about spiritual warfare because I'll be honest with you. I don't trust what I hear out of a lot of deliverance ministers' mouths. There's very few that I trust. And usually the ones that I trust and I know what they're talking about are so ridiculed by the Christian community that nobody will, even though they're dead on accurate and they're doing a lot of good work, they're ridiculed and people don't take them serious. When I'm saying that to simply say that there's one of me, and there's only a few people that I trust in the doing any type of deliverance ministry. I am very, very busy. I work a lot of hours in a regular job, and I would rather have, I outlined a lot in both Nightmare in Holmes County and 225th Street that I think you could read those books, either one of them or both of them, and know exactly how to deal with this stuff. But I want to go into more detail about spiritual warfare so people can read it and know how to help themselves, because it is very difficult for me to help everyone that asks me for help. But I also want to write about other cases and the continuing of 225th Street.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to let me know when you write that book, aren't you?
Absolutely.
And come back on my show.
I would love to.
Oh, I'd love to have you back. Would you tell the viewers again where they can get your books?
They are available at my website, which is patrickmeechan.com. Last name is spelled Meechan. You can pick them up at amazon.com as well. You can get a Kindle or a paperback at Amazon of Nightmare in Holmes County. You can get a Kindle version of 225th Street at amazon.com, or you can pick up a soft cover at my website for 225th Street. And, I will say, my writing, my perspective is somewhat controversial because I'm honestly sticking right to a biblical perspective. That's been what I feel like that's my angle. That is what I'm called to do. But I think if people have an open mind to look at what I'm saying, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. I think if you apply the principles I share in the books, it will change people's situations. I do believe that.
Awesome, Patrick. And again, it was my honor and a pleasure to have you on my show, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Whoops. Oh, what did you think? Wasn't that awesome? I saw somebody said I should smile more, but I get so engrossed in my guest and listening to their story, because I'm listening the same time you are, and it's a wonderful speaker. Patrick, it was a pleasure to have you on the show and for you to share your stories. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope everybody enjoyed it too. And thank you everybody for being here with us. Next week, next Thursday, I have Mike Barra from Ancient Aliens. He's on the History Channel, and he does a show called Ancient Aliens, and I'm really excited as well to have him on the show. Oh my God, I'm going to pick his brain on all kinds of stuff, because I have so many questions about the star people and hybrids, and I can't wait to have him on the show. So I hope you join me next Thursday. And everybody, thank you again so much for being here. It was a pleasure to bring you my shows. And let me do some shout outs, okay, before I have 4 minutes. Jamela Castile, Jimmy Cortez, Al Fish, yay. Oh my God, wait a minute, guys. Okay, now you're driving, it's going fast. Wait a minute. Al Fish, thank you, honey. Jay Alford, hey. Nice to see you. River Culver, thanks. You made the show. Thank you. Maria Amanda Amador, nice to see you. Carrie Wide, nice to see you. Alexandra Violet, the Unseen, and my mod, my buddy, Dave Spinks, Country Roads. Don't forget, he's got a fabulous YouTube channel, the best paranormal investigator on YouTube. Please check his channel out. Putty Tat, Meow Meow, Ari Yiler, Janet W, Spooky Raven, my old friend Spooky Raven. She also has a show on Tuesdays. Oh my God, you guys are going so darn fast. Okay, Spooky Raven, oh God, honey, type it in there, because I can't remember. Spooky Raven, she does a show on Tuesdays, Anything But Ordinary. It's a fabulous show. She does all different kinds of paranormal subjects and true crime. Please check her out. Griffin Corcoran. Did I say that right? Royce Hinman, thanks Royce. Another mod. I've known Royce for a long time. Thanks so much for modding. Miss Ty, Tina Nichols, thank you. Trent Bennett, you're still in here. How you feeling? You okay, honey? And thanks for hanging out and staying with us for so long tonight. And Lori Starr, Janet W, Chipateria, April Wilcher, Zulma, whoops, I lost it. Oh my God. Okay, hold on. Oh, darn it. Oh, where are you? Zuma Carlos, I saw that. Charmaine Grant, Mary Duval, Angel Simmons, Aaron Kemp, Elaine Michael, Butters, Butterfly Kisses, my Butters. I got a kitty named Butters, Susan Yee, and I know I saw Ginger Simmons. She was in. Andrew Cox, and I know Mark Britchard. Oh God, Mark was in there too. B Singer 11, Tina Nichols, Justin Elias. Hey honey, nice to see you. Nancy Soplavita. Hi Nancy, thanks for joining us tonight. Let's see, Alicia Franco. There you are, Ginger. Oh, thanks, Justin. Barbara Peacock. Emma Schaefer. Anybody? Margarita Harveth. Aaron Belkey. Anybody else want to shout out? God, we had a huge crowd tonight. It was huge. Did you see it jumped up to 203? What that was all about. Melissa P. Mark Brichette, there you are. Guillermo sorry, Garcia, Mike Smith, Joker SDN. I hope you guys all enjoyed the show. Spooky Honey, I hope you're feeling better. I know she hasn't been feeling well. Brandy Shirley, Para Princess Patricia, Jill Forret, Heather Paquette. Anybody else want to shout out? Oh my God, DJ Lee, I think we're getting some thunder. Willful Today, Tiffany Twisted, Tommy Roberts. Hey, Tommy. Lisa Knox. Oh my God, you made it. And I got to say hi to you, Lisa. Yes. Anybody else? Kristen Walker, sorry. Sandra McCormick. The Unseen Scene. Anybody else? Thanks, everybody. And thank you so much again for being here. I love doing my shows, and I will be here every Thursday. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. He was awesome. Don't forget, you can buy his books. Xevu, yes, shout out to you, honey. Okay, let's see. Oh my God, it's 8:01. Debbie Gale. Okay, everybody. So I'm gonna go because I need to edit this show a little bit. Melissa P. Thanks again so much, and I hope you enjoy my shows. I love doing these shows, and I will be here every Thursday. So I'll see you next week. Should be another great show. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight. I love you guys. Don't forget that. And I will, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, if you would please do that. So I'm going to stop the show now, and I'll see you guys all next week. And everybody, yes, Dave, everybody rocks. Thanks so much. I love you guys. Good night.